Hey guys, today's show is dedicated to Jeremy Whitson, who tragically took his own life aged 17, a former Manchester City Academy prospect. And just to open the show today, we're going to speak about mental health in sport, mental health generally. Obviously, it's something which I'm passionate about, as everyone knows, and obviously we've got this mental health in sport series which comes out on Sundays. But I want to talk about the pressures on kind of young players, and when I say young players, I mean the kids in these academies, and whether clubs and football authorities can do more. Andy, we spoke about this literally 2 weeks ago or a week ago when we recorded your mental health in sport show, about how players are in the academy system from like 7 and they go all the way up, and they're just primed to be professional footballers. And then suddenly at 16, 17, they're told, and sometimes they're not even told you're not good enough, they're just cut. And all of a sudden, everything's taken away from them, and they're on their own. If they haven't got like support from family or friends, they are on their own.
It annoys me, Si. I'm in a mixture of upset, annoyed, angry, because, and I'm not at the boy, by the way. You know what I mean? Because what he's done, he's done for his own reasons. I'm angry at the way that these people are getting handled by other people, you know, because that's what it is basically. You know what I mean? They're not getting a second thought. You know what I mean? That we speak about organisations, we can talk about the FA, we can talk about the PFA, we can talk about the EFL, the Premier League, we can talk about Manchester City. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, out with this, Manchester City are going to come out with this really sounding really bad. You know what I mean? Not just this show. I mean, in the world of football, but it could be in any football in the world. It could be in any club in the world. And what annoys me is there's nothing there to help these young players, to give them advice to what the next step is. And for me, once it's happened, it's too late. Don't tell somebody what the next step is once he's been released or once he's going to be released. Go into clubs at 14, 15, 16. Tell them how important education is. Tell them there's a platform to play football till they retire, at non-league football, at League 1, League 2, abroad, in Australia, in America, overseas. Tell them how important, you know what I mean? There's a level for everybody, but unfortunately, players are put under that much pressure by peers, by parents, by themselves, by clubs, by friendship groups, that they're not given a chance. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, when the news hits them, it hits them like the stone, and they don't know how to handle it. They're embarrassed, they're lost, and then by the time they know it, somebody like Jeremy does what he does, and it's such a I can't believe it, because you know what I mean, and this year has been the worst year involved in life. You know what I mean, with COVID, with people losing loved ones, personally with losing two good friends of mine for various reasons, and now this, and I don't know what we've got to do or what's got to happen before somebody joins in and takes it seriously. It's starting to annoy me now, it really is.
Yeah, I feel a bit like that. It just feels very much as if people are saying, and like Jacob off the mental health show, he says quite often that clubs will kind of tick a box as if to say they'll do the bare minimum with players generally in regards to mental health support, but it's more about so they can say they've done it rather than having genuine concern, care, empathy for these players and for these kids. Laurence, are we asking too much of football clubs and football authorities to do more to help children? Because this is what they are. These are children who are built up as the next big thing by their coaches and whatnot, and then all of a sudden they're out in the cold with sometimes no explanation. Is it too much to expect for them to have a bit of support and help and advice?
No, I think it's absolutely vitally important that when these players and as you called them, dead right, children are taken in by clubs and they're put through the system, that it's made absolutely clear to them that even if they're in the system, it's still a massive long shot to make it. You know, the amount of kids that they're picked up in these squads, out of them, 2, 3 possibly will make it at that club at the very, very most. Others will then have careers elsewhere. And they also need to sort of tell the parents as well. I think the parents as well will need to be managed, and expectations need to be managed. And it's a really important thing. The one thing that sort of leapt up at me at this is what's the PFA's role in this? Because these players they're still players. Are they actually part of the PFA? or if they haven't had their professional contracts, are they not kind of deemed part of the PFA?
Everybody,
I don't know if you've got a...
Everybody, Laurence, in my knowledge, everybody who is at a professional club is inside the realms of the PFA. So they, you know what I mean? I remember when I was at YTS, the PFA came out to us and talked about media training, talked about etiquette lessons, so how to go to a hotel and handle yourself, social media. You know, so like you say there, you know what I mean? It's upsetting because how many are they waiting for before they do something about it? You know, because young kids, you know what I mean? You just said there about the percentage, small percentage of them making it. The percentage at Man City, even smaller, by the way. So, you know what I mean? You can look at Man City, Phil Foden. Not everybody's lucky enough to be a Phil Foden. Not everybody's lucky enough to go on to play for Manchester City. But the pressure for that to not happen shouldn't fall on the young boy's shoulders, and he shouldn't feel as though the only way out is to do what's happened. You know that. I look at the amount of players who've come from Middlesbrough, for example, who haven't made the first team, who go on to have so many successful non-league careers. You know, that I had a conversation this morning with an ex-Middlesbrough coach, ex-Hartlepool United assistant manager Paul Jenkins, and Paul had a tweet feed on his Twitter from loads of ex-professionals, current non-league players who really upset because, you know what I mean, some of their comments were, how many people is going to have to happen to before they educate them and tell them that there's a good living to be made, going to work, earning silly money, getting paid to play football, which is a great job, by the way, and earning silly money as well, but getting paid cash in hand, you know what I mean, and getting paid to play football on a weekend. So I just think for me, there's got to be an education. Laurence said there about parents. For me, the parents need the education as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Give them. I'm not saying parenting classes, but give them education on how to handle your son or daughter be the best footballer in the world, because that could happen to you, and if you can't handle the pressure of being a parent, then the pressures can be silly on you. The pressures on your son is going to be outrageous if they ever make it to the top, like a Mason Greenwood, like the Marcus Rashford, the Phil Fodens. We spoke off air there about 18-year-old, 19-year-old children, kids, young adults making mistakes. You know what I mean? And social media. Social media is the worst thing invented for young footballers at the minute, because you've got to be this high-profile person who has this flash car, flash house, does all this, has loads of money, has a flash girlfriend on your arm. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It's real life. And the real life is people getting released at 18, 19-year-old, people not handling it very well, people committing suicide. It's just so sad, and we've lost too many people recently with COVID that we're now losing people who aren't handling things because they've had no support. You know what I mean? I'm not saying his club hasn't supported him or his parents haven't supported him, but I think there's more people who should have supported him.
Yeah, did you ever have that, Andy? Did you have like somebody at the moment where a manager or the person in charge of the club just went, "Sorry, Andy, that's it. We're going to move you on." And how did you handle that?
Not very well. You know, it happened to me twice. High profile Middlesbrough Steve McLaren did it, pulled me in his office, told me I wasn't needed anymore. And for a young boy, I was still a young lad. I think I was a little bit older, probably 20, 21. But I saw...
Still young.
Yeah,
really young.
I saw it as an opportunity. I saw it as I haven't played as much football as I wanted. I want to go and make a name for myself. The only way to do that is by getting on the grass and making a name. When it happened to Cardiff, when Dave Jones did it, I handled it probably worse. I was an adult, so to speak, 24, 25, I was a dad. But the more I thought about that was, how am I going to pay for a mortgage? How am I going to, you know what I mean? So I was thinking of different things, and I handled it a lot differently. But listen, there's no support mechanism. You know what I mean? Both clubs didn't really care less how I handled it, what I was going back to, if I was going home, how I was going back to my family, and that's wrong. You know what I mean? That's wrong on so many levels. You know, and football and life's evolved now, so I would like to think we weren't as black and white as that, but it sounds as though we are, and we're still going through the same problems and the same systems as there were when I played back in 2000. It's outrageous. We're 20 years down the line, 25 years down the line. It shouldn't still be happening. And like I say, how many more people have got to go through this, and families are getting affected. Mums, dads, brothers, sisters, friends, other players. It's outrageous. It shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and I just wanted to pick up on 2 points you said there. Number one, with the parents, with academy players as well, I think it's vitally important that coaches throughout all the age groups are honest with their with the parents, because I've witnessed firsthand, sometimes you get coaches who are just kind of saying, oh, yeah, he's doing really well. So the parents then think their boy's doing really well, he's going to make it. So they're encouraging that in their child. And of course you're going to encourage a child. But I think equally, when you get to that 15, 16 age, if coaches need to be realistic to the parents and say, look, come the end of the season, when it comes to making a decision, at the moment, maybe it's not, we think that we're not going to keep him on, or we're not going to give him a pro contract, because then the parents can lay the groundwork. They can, over the coming months, prepare their children for rejection. Whereas if all you've been told is, game, or at the end of the season, we're going to be giving out pro contracts, you're doing really well. At the end of the season, all you're thinking about is getting that pro contract. As a kid, you're not even thinking about, maybe I'm not going to get one. Do you know what I mean?
But they should be challenging you to think before they even get to that decision. That should be the conversation throughout. It shouldn't just be like, will you, won't you, or hinging on that decision. It should be, hey, you're doing bloody brilliant, great stuff. You're coming on a treat. Make sure you're in class, because you need to be doing this to provide yourself another. And if you don't make it, have you seen the non-league? Have you played at this level? Bring somebody in from that level. I get paid this. I can do a living. I can work at the same time and there are other ways. So that all the way through, it should be told that you're class, you can make it, but you need to be doing these things as well at the same time. Because
I don't think it helps as well, Laurence and Si, about the amount of money that's involved in players, and players think that they've got to achieve that kind of status, and they get thrown a lot of money at a young age as well. They do. I didn't, a 16-year-old, I was getting paid £37.50. 17 years old, I was getting paid £42.50, so I got a £5 pay rise. My first contract professionally was £250 a week. That these kind of things kept me grounded, and it didn't put too much pressure on me. The amount of money what's involved now in professional football is just outrageous, and it puts so much pressure on players, because players are going into games, going into training, going into life under pressure to perform, under pressure not to make a mistake, under pressure because the worry that that's not going to last forever. Well, you know what I mean? I could have got paid more money going to play for non-league team, getting cash in hand, and getting a job. So at the time, doing that. So it's, you know what I mean. But it was so different, and I think, but the clubs knew that kind of pressure wasn't there. Where the pressure now is there, and on younger players. And for me, there's no excuse to not be aware of what's going on, and to not be responsible. For me, then that's the word for me. Who is responsible? Who's going to take responsibility for what's happening? Is the PFA going to take some responsibility? Well, nobody's come out so far, and I can go back 6 months, 12 months. Are clubs taking responsibility? Is it there? Whose responsibility is it? You know what I mean? Because each club might do things differently, but Man City might release a player, and then the same player might go and sign for Man United, and they might do things differently as well. So for me, it's all got to be done the same way. And if that's an organisation, externally, internally within football, I'm all for it, because for me, it's all got to be run the same. And if that's somebody going into every single league club, every single non-league club, every single junior football club, every single month, 6 months, 3 months, however it may be, or at the other end of the phone, that your phone rings when the player needs you, then a little bit like a hotline, you know what I mean? That if they're there to save a life, then for me, they're doing a great job.
Yeah, 100%. Look, at the end of the day, in my opinion, and I'm sure you guys agree, that mental health and talking about mental health is more important than ever. Suicide rates in the UK are at like an all-time high. It's particularly, in the modern era, if you like to say. But we've got to do something
on that point though, that's also education, because going in to tell the players and tell people that it's not a weakness. You know what I mean? That your manager will not think second thoughts and think negatively of you if you go in and say I'm struggling mentally. You know what I mean? Whereas back in the day when I played, it was a naughty word, it was a swear word. You didn't want to show weakness, so you kept things to yourself, regardless of your home life or your football life or something was going on in your mind or in your head or in your life. But it shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? We're all in this together. We're all in this life together, and you only get one shot at it. You know what I mean? So if that's being successful, or if that's just trying your best and getting the best out of what you've got, then we've all got to jump on board together.
What did you make of the Boro manager's comments over the weekend about his goalkeeper having to man up? Did you see that over the weekend?
Yeah, I did.
I was not happy.
Yeah, disrespectful for me because I said Dunny's a player that I grew up with, and you know what I mean. He's pretty old school, the same as probably I've been brought up. That was, and it's a naughty word, isn't it? You know what I mean. Whereas if you're struggling, you're struggling. You know what I mean? Because how would he feel today if that player had taken that to heart and done something stupid? You know what I mean? Then he's got to live with that for the rest of his life. So you've got to be very careful what you say, internally and externally. You know what I mean? And for me, anything that happens inside the dressing room on the pitch stays inside the dressing room on the pitch. It should not come out to in the public. It should not come out into social media. And if it ever does, then so be it. It's a mistake by somebody's part, but not a manager's decision to do that. For me, that's outrageous.
It was
100%.
the wording of it as well, wasn't it? The man up bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, he's going to take responsibility. You know, he's a young goalkeeper. We're going to have to work with him on this. Fine, but it's very, very different to telling him he's going to have to man up.
Yeah,
it was very, very poorly. He seemed angry, and I think maybe he wasn't thinking in that moment.
Listen, Laurence, we've all been there where we, you know what I mean, we all get angry, we all go upset. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean. Sometimes managers get a microphone shoved in front under the noses straight away after the goalkeeper's made a mistake or he's done something. You know what I mean? And for me, I'm hoping he regrets it, and I'm hoping he learns from it, because he's a young manager himself. He's going to make mistakes, like a 19-year-old player is going to make mistakes. So hopefully that doesn't happen again, because it could have catastrophic effects on somebody's life.
Yeah. It's not even his goalkeeper, right? It's a loan.
Yeah.
He's on loan from Fleetwood.
Yeah, so I'm hoping
Joey Barton thinking about it,
and you wouldn't mess with Joey.
No.
At the end of the day, like, we've lost far too many young men, young adults, and I think at the end of the day, what we need to do, we need to change the way we approach mental health, whether it's education, awareness, people talking about it publicly. We just got to keep doing it and keep working at it, because whilst we're still losing people, we're losing the battle against it as well. So obviously we've started the show slightly different today, but now we are going to go into our usual show.
It's Andy Campbell! It's in! Campbell comes off the bench to be a hero! A superhero! Breakthrough! It's taken a while, but it's been worth the wait for Cardiff City!
So people joining now will be very confused. But hey guys, I'm Si, and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Andy Campbell Show. This is episode number 83. We wanted to talk about mental health and Jeremy Whitson separately from everything else, and kind of just talk about it as a subject, but also pay tribute to a young lad who's obviously gone through so much. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube currently. A.C.E Podcast Nation, of course, home to many great shows and series, so please subscribe, youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation. Follow us on social media. You can follow the show at A.C.E Footy Show on all social media platforms. And big thank you to Black Diamond Sports, of course, for supporting the show. They're a global sports agency representing sports stars from around the world. And for more information, you can visit their social media pages, links in the description, and of course the closing credits. And a big thank you to Bespoke Financial for sponsoring the show. And here's a very quick word from them.
My mummy and daddy have been talking about life insurance. It sounds like something to protect my brother and me, but I don't really understand. Then my Auntie Louise told Mummy about Bespoke Financial Teesside. She said they're a local company who helped her with her life insurance. Mummy got in touch, and because they're based locally, a man called Darren was able to come to our house. He was really friendly. Darren stayed for a cup of tea and made it all really easy to understand. He said that life insurance will protect our home and family if anything bad were to happen. Like if mummy or daddy got sick, then we'd get enough money to take care of us, and our house would be paid for so it wouldn't get taken away. After an hour, Darren said goodbye and mummy and daddy seemed a lot happier. Once it was all sorted, we could all relax and watch a film together as a family. I don't know why they didn't do it sooner.
Bespoke Financial specialise in life insurance, critical illness, income protection, mortgages and sports cover. So please check out their social media and their website, all of which are linked in the description below and on our pages. And we thank them for sponsoring tonight's show and Friday's show. So very quickly, I'm going to introduce my guests, who we've obviously just heard from anyway. As usual, my co-host, still the king of the Millennium Stadium, David Jones' favourite son, ex-Cardiff City and Middlesbrough striker, Mr. Andy Campbell. How goes it, my friend?
Good evening. Yeah, really looking forward to this. It's like the I was going to say good old days there, but I mean that in the best possible terms. Just talking anything football. Sometimes it takes the pressure off just trying to find a script. Or I haven't got no questions for you, Laurence. That's a good thing.
That's quite all right. There's plenty to chat.
I've got loads for you though, but it's not scripted.
And joining us is, of course, TalkSPORT's Welsh correspondent, Mr. Laurence Mora. Welcome, Laurence. How are you, mate?
Oh, really good. Excited to be here, guys, as well. So,
yeah,
the first part of the show, I really enjoyed doing. I think you've got to do that. But yeah, ready to get stuck into some football now.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So no Magnificent Seven this week. If you want to see Lawrence's Magnificent Seven, then you could check out the show I did with him a while ago. But it's like, where do we start? Andy? Do you know where I want to start? Let's brighten the show up a little bit with some kind of little funny thing. Fabian Schär, Newcastle versus Wolves.
Yeah.
Andy,
Yeah.
tell me about it.
Well, I laughed when I saw it. Obviously, I don't know if anybody saw it, but Fabian Schär, Newcastle player, obviously he was passing the ball down the line. The ball hit a water bottle. Obviously, it didn't go where he wanted it to go, so he complained to the referee, and he ended up getting a free kick for it. Which, listen, I would have taken a water bottle with me all my career and threw it on the floor for every bad pass, every bad shot. If I knew I was going to get the ball back, I just thought it was an outrageous decision. I understand. I understand that it shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? People referred back to Darren Bent and the infamous goal against Sunderland against Liverpool, where the beach ball hit the ball. You know, in VAR that would have taken it away. But for me, these things make football fun and make football different to everything else. So if you're going to take it away and make it serious, then you know what I mean? Because nobody meant it to happen. Nobody wanted it to happen. The ball could have gone anywhere. It could have bounced over it. He could have chipped it over it and threw the water bottle away, and it wouldn't have been as funny. But these are the things where we need. You know what I mean? We haven't got any fans in the stadium, so we need some humour coming from somewhere. You know what I mean? So to take it away, and for the player, by the way, to take it that seriously, for me, I think it's the worst part of it, because if you know what I mean, I'd have probably hit the water bottle. I'd have missed the water bottle. Let's start that one. But I'd have probably hit the water bottle. I'd have picked the water bottle and had a drink or something, because I'd have made a joke out of it instead of it being a serious thing.
How did he get a free kick though? That's what I didn't really get.
Well, I don't get it. It was complaining the referee, so the referee gave him. You know what I mean? Instead of just, for me, it should have been a drop ball, an uncontested drop ball is the word which I think should have been happening. But it was a bit laughable. But I thought it was probably the highlight of the game for me. Because I thought it was a dull game. Oh
yes, it was not the best. But then, me and Kev, when we did our crazy football show, which is being revamped soon, we looked into the rules and to see about the beach, because the beach ball clip came up in that where we were looking at clips, and we looked into the rules, and I asked Kev if he knew the rules of whether that goal should have been allowed, and basically because it's on the field of play. It's there. Yeah, like if the ball hits the referee and goes in, it's a goal. Then so really it shouldn't have been a free kick or a drop ball. It should have just been whatever it was, a throw in, and that was it. You know, it's an interesting one, isn't it? They did adapt it, didn't they?
Yeah, there's a new rule for referees. If the ball hits the referee, it's a drop ball.
Yeah, uncontested drop ball by the team who kicks the ball at the referee.
Yeah, and they've got to
So is
stop
that at all
immediately, haven't they?
times, no matter where it is on the pitch, if it doesn't affect the play?
Well, if I'm having a shot,
goes to
if I'm having a shot and the ball hits the referee and it's going wide, and then I get the ball from inside the box, it's going to open a can of worms. By the way, I just think we need to be very careful because yes, referees try to stay out of the way, but the humans, after all, you know what I mean, and a mistake could happen. So for me, just go back to the old thing. You know what I mean? If a ball hits a referee, it's funny. We get on with it. We have a bit of a laugh with the referee, which doesn't seem to happen anymore. Lawrence, we've said this in other shows. You know what I mean? The relationship between a player and referee now is just it's not there. It's not, I was going to say it's inconsistent, but it's just inconspicuous now. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Mate, you're absolutely right about just the seriousness. See, this was always my problem with VAR. It was like, you've got to have VAR, you've got to have video refs because you've got to get these decisions. I'm like, you know what? It's a game. And I know that there's a lot of money on it. And I know that I go there to watch a game. I go there to watch bad incidents. I want bad refereeing. And it might drive me up the wall. But you know what? We'll live with it. But this stopping and starting and VAR for me.
Yes. Let's talk about VAR.
But let's
talk about VAR.
But Lawrence, so we can go along. We could talk about the same thing though, because we can talk about people wanted it. You know what I mean? It was gonna eradicate all these mistakes, and then all of a sudden a team gets relegated because of it. You know what I mean? Because the Aston Villa game last year, and I know that's a different thing. It was goal line technology, but it's still VAR.
Part of video technology, isn't it?
You know what I mean? I'm one of those. I wanted to go to watch a game. If something happened as a talking point, I want to talk about it later on in the pub and have a laugh about it. And instead of saying, "Oh, imagine if VAR wasn't there, we could have been talking about this and that." And you know what I mean? For me, it's just zapped the seriousness out of it. And I probably only noticed how dull it is when there's no fans, because it just, you know what I mean? I would hate supporters to celebrate a goal twice at the minute or 3 times, or celebrate a non-goal again, because that was starting to annoy me. And we're not learning. We're not. You know what I mean? For me, there was an opportunity to put VAR to bed and have it really nailed down with no supporters here. You know, we had a real opportunity, but we haven't, and we still haven't, and we're still miles away from where we should be in the world, not just in England, by the way. The world's just as bad at it as we are.
For me, when that goal line technology failed and VAR didn't pull it up, for me VAR was dead then, and I was done with it, because if you can't pull up that when your goal line technology fails, then what's the point? There's no point in having that video technology.
Loses credibility, doesn't it? Loses credibility and respect straight away.
To save us going over the same VAR points, obviously that's been talked to death. I want to talk about something else. I think it was the German league, but I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. A league in Europe, I think it was the German league, brought in a rule. It's called 10 centimetre linesman's error rule, basically. So for offsides, they're given kind of 10 centimetres either way. As linesman's kind of, let me bring it up. But I wondered what you thought of that.
See,
because
this drives me insane. 10 centimetres, what the hell? If
Where do
there's
they get it
a
from?
daylight between him, flag him offside. If there isn't, let him go and score a bloody goal. God,
I totally agree. I think it's all Lawrence. For me, how do you know it's 10?
By how do you know it's
10 centimetres? You know what I mean? Has somebody got the ruler out? You know what I mean? Like, let's be honest. You know what I mean? And is that happening across the board? Why is it only happening in one country? UEFA and FIFA are supposed to run football. So who's running football? A league's individual running football, and UEFA and FIFA are just sitting out and going, "Oh well, it looks like it's okay there. We'll move it over here." I just don't get it. For me, it's not.
When you've got like a little finger which is offside, or
Gavin says it is Germany, right? But I say that, you know what I mean. For me, it's got to be the same body part, and for me, it's got to be. For me, it's feet. Every football's played with feet. Feet is got to be the judgment. You know what I mean? If you think you're offside, you're offside. Because I could go and try and do a diving header, but you know what I mean. For me, it's feet. Feet are the most important thing within football, because and just go with that rule across the board.
We've been taken over by geeks. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
We've been taken over by geeks. Like, it's now for an armchair supporter that never goes to a game, that has to have, and they can do the replays, and you got your things, and Sky are all excited about it. But the person in the stadium, is it better for them?
Out of it. No.
Are they the one paying their money, going to watch the game? Is it better for them? And it absolutely 100% isn't.
I'm not even entirely sure that the people at home are enjoying it. Like, video technology in cricket it adds something to the game. Video technology in rugby, I'm not sure it necessarily adds something, but it's done so well and so quickly that it enhances what the referees do. American football and basketball I'm not so familiar with, but
same thing in
football, I
tennis.
just don't think it works, mate, in football. Tennis as well is good.
But I think in football it's too broad. You know what I mean? Instead of just focusing on one area, you know what I mean? Your tennis is you can challenge. You've got your ins and outs. You know what I mean? In football, have three challenges. A captain's got to do it. You know what I mean? If you think it's offside, it's game over. You know what I mean? You don't get three if you win. I just don't like the way it's been set up. I don't like the way that it works in other sports. And football can't get their heads around it. For me, I wouldn't have personally put it in the best league in the world. I'd have tried it and trialled it in a league which wasn't going to cost anybody serious amounts of money. And then if it works, great. Then we can implement. I wouldn't have started it right at the top. I'd have started at the bottom and filtered it through, personally.
Yeah.
Well, this is why it died for me early on as well, is when you had FA Cup games where teams would be playing in the same round in the same tournament. In one game you'd have VAR, and then another game you wouldn't, because it was a smaller stadium or whatever. And for me, that's not a level playing field in the same tournament. So what's the point?
That was our favourite, wasn't it? That was our favourite one. What was it? The Watford game when they drew 3-3 and all 3 goals were VAR. VAR contested. It's just outrageous.
Well, I was at I was working Swansea against Manchester City. You know, the season that Man City won the domestic treble. Well, they should have been out of that competition because Swansea were in the lead. Aguero was offside, but they didn't have it because Swansea at that time were a championship club, so they didn't have it at that ground. Yet they had it kind of, a match earlier that afternoon. So,
I just don't like it. And we said that one. I don't know Watford would play. Was it Tranmere? Watford played Tranmere, I think, that day. And all three Tranmere goals were contested by VAR. You know what I mean? Whereas if it was at Tranmere, they've ended up going through. And I just think it's such a shame. You know what I mean? It's the best cup of competition in the world. It's lost loads of credibility. Teams don't take it seriously. But as a fan and a young boy growing up who used to watch St Greavesy and used to love the whole day of a cup final and just every round, it's just, for me, it just kills football and it's just killing credibility all the way through for me.
Lockdown was absolutely dreadful, but the one thing that sort of stood out for me was those replays. Did any of you see the replays? The FA Cup final. I love the Coventry City one against Spurs, 87.
Keith Houchin diving header. I was lucky enough to meet Keith. But no, I text Guy Mowbray, because obviously Guy did the shows, didn't he, on ITV, and it was. So I just text Guy, said, please keep these shows going, because it's keeping me going through lockdown. Some of the I was requesting games. I was like, I want to see Liverpool against Crystal Palace semi-final at Villa Park. I was like, I just wanted to see loads of people and loads of games, which I just grew up on. I just loved it. Absolutely.
It was fantastic.
Great comment there. Great comment. He says, if Swansea lose because of a VAR decision, then those few minutes is perfectly fine.
You did tell me this was going to be Cardiff and Boro heavy.
Oh,
tonight.
Yes. Okay, moving away from VAR, Andy's be back now. I mentioned to you guys quickly off air, Laurence, but it's come out today that Paul Pogba is taking legal action against a certain tabloid newspaper after totally fake reports saying basically he was going to quit international football due to comments made by the country's president, Emmanuel Macron, about Islam. Pogba said that it's 100% unfounded. It's news to me going around. He's fed up, appalled, angry, shocked, frustrated that media use him to create headlines, fake headlines, and add in the French national team and his religion to the pot. And I said to you guys, I'm glad that he is taking legal action, because I, not just with football, with generally the tabloid newspapers, I feel like they should be held more accountable, and I would like to see more players, when it is false and there's no, it's just completely out of the blue rubbish. I would like to see more people, more players take these tabloids to task. Unfortunately, the apology will be a 2 or 3 line sentence on page 10 or something. But what do you guys think? Laurence, you first. What do you think about Paul Pogba suing said newspaper, or taking legal action against said newspaper for this story?
in general, I think it's a good thing if footballers start sticking up for themselves in these situations. I think they're not necessarily just talking about Pogba here, but I think there's various times when a footballer will just let things go. They'll let go. And I'm pretty sure it's not as bad as it used to be in terms of the way that the press handled it. I think, I remember watching that Bobby Robson documentary, and the way the press sort of hounded him and were going through his bins and things like that and trying to find stuff. And you think, God, what awful, just for the way the man was just managing an England football team. So I think we have moved a bit away from there. But I do see particular players who are just always on the radar.
He's one of them, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be like they know they can get a good story out. They know they can get a good number of clicks online about it. And so I think if a footballer feels, if a footballer feels that it's overstepping the mark, then they need to put a marker in the ground and take action against it. But yeah, it's we did. We talked off air, didn't we, about the way that players handle it, and I don't know, it's such a tricky one.
Yeah, I agree. My concern is what he's going to get from it. You know what I mean? Is he doing it? Is he doing it because he's got that much power? He's got that much money, and he can fight. He can fight the daily newspaper. He can fight the area. Whereas, you know what I mean? There's probably worse stories which people don't. You know what I mean? We spoke, didn't we, about a footballer who was suing another footballer for a tackle. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? For me, reporters report on football games or report on things. I mean, when you start mixing in religion and you start, that's naughty anyway. You know what I mean? He's a footballer. You know what I mean? For me, you comment on his football. You don't comment on his nationality, his skin colour, his religion. You comment on how good or bad he's played or playing or he is. Definitely. You know what I mean? That's the end job. You know what I mean? And and Laurence will tell you. You know what I mean? For the job that Laurence does, you know that. You know what I mean? Your job, it's not worth doing if you're not going to do it properly. You know what I mean? If we do the Friday night show, don't we, about the Championship side, and we comment on how well or badly we think clubs, teams, individuals are doing. You know what I mean? We don't start saying why we think they're doing bad because it's not our job. You know what I mean? We comment on the facts, and the facts are, for me, Paul Pogba currently is in a bad mood and he's in a bad place, football terms, because he's not playing at Man United.
He's been dropped.
But he's not playing because of poor performances. So the manager was in his rights to drop him. The tabloids are jumping on the back, but they're not. For me, they're not giving the right facts. Just say he's playing badly. He's being dropped because he's got better players in the team. That's the end of. That's all.
Professional thing, right? It's professional. So you go to. That's part of the reason I went into broadcast and radio rather than going into sort of the newspaper side of things, because that side of things just doesn't interest me in the slightest. I'm looking at TalkSPORT. I'm a match reporter, and we'll go out and we'll do our interviews post-match, but it's about the game. And you can say what you want about the game. You can ask hard questions. That's fine, but it's about their profession. Their profession is to go out and perform on a Saturday afternoon or whenever, and my job is to ask them, why didn't it happen today? What was the reasons? What was the background to it? But I'm not interested in his private life. His private life is his and should remain his.
And they're entitled to have a private life just because they're footballers and they got a certain job. It doesn't mean that they automatically deserve to be slandered or to be followed around when they want to go for a walk with their wife. It's
all about money. It is the great
but people
clicks.
But people don't like that, do they? You know what I mean? They say how he's not on as much, by the way, but his Instagram used to be ridiculous, Paul Pogba. He used to be on probably constantly. Hourly, you know what I mean? He was doing stories, he was there, he was in all these places, he was travelling, you know what I mean? But if the club are allowing him to do it, then he's allowed to do it. He's not training, he's not a footballer in his downtime, so he's doing what he wants to do and he's posting what he wants to do. People don't like to see that, and when he plays badly at United, or when he doesn't really play badly for France, does he? But when he plays badly for his club, people jump on the back of it, and rightly so. But don't blame what he's doing. Just blame that he's not a very good footballer at the time. You know, because
I think Solskjaer read the right act, didn't he, to him and Lingard about social media, because it does look bad if you're playing dreadfully and you're in a run of bad form, and then you're on Instagram dancing and laughing and joking, and fans of those clubs then are kind of like, well, hang on a minute. How about you get on the training pitch and work hard, and I can see the
They
frustration.
might be doing that anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Surely,
That's
like,
it. You can't train 24/7, can you?
Exactly. These are boys. They need their downtime. Like,
I totally agree. If they're
And they
doing-
can't
if
go
they're-
out.
If they're doing
They
it,
can't
if
go
they're
out
doing
anywhere.
it, if they're doing it, then why not? Why doesn't the world want to see it? You know what I mean? He's got millions and millions of followers, so
Yeah,
people want
exactly
to see
that.
who the real Paul Pogba is. Paul Pogba, in 10 years' time, will not be a footballer anymore. He will be. He might be an actor. He might be a manager. He might be. He won't be a journalist. He'll be.
nah, he's far too much money to go be a
gonna work
journalist.
for a tabloid.
He might do something completely different, but I guarantee what he'll do it on social media. So, you know what I mean? He's just going to change his life and just have a sideways step. And I just think sometimes we do take things far too seriously, and people who hide behind false names on social media. Another my
Yeah,
biggest
you
bugbear.
got to think about that. And
Yeah, I don't. Listen, I'm all for it. If people want to be themselves on social media, and you want to comment, live and die by your comments, because you know what I mean. If you do a derogatory comment, then people can find you. And I mean that. I don't mean people can find you as a
No, but they
Paul
know
Pogba.
who you are.
I mean, people know you are. You know what I mean? Because you can't hide behind a keyboard. You know, let's be honest. You know what I mean? Be yourself. And if you use social media just to have a look, then great. Don't post anything. But if you want to post, then be careful.
Yeah, right. Here, I've got a question for both of you. So I'll ask you, Andy, first to put you on the spot, and then Laurence can have a couple of minutes to think about it.
It depends how long I answer, by the way.
Yeah, that's it. It is a one-word answer. What was your
Take
footballing?
your time, mate. Make it as long as you want.
What was your footballing highlight of the weekend? Any level, from non-league to Premier League, all over Europe. What was your footballing highlight of the weekend?
My footballing highlights was FA Cup day. So I took a big notice on the North East football teams in the FA Cup. So Mask United got beat by Brackley 5-1. South Shields beat Halifax Town, or FC Halifax Town now, 2-0. So they qualified for the first round proper. Hartlepool did the same, and Darlington did the same. So for my area, you know what I mean, we've made some serious money in terms of North East, and they're waiting for the draw. So I'm so hoping they get money spinners, well, you know what I mean, because or games that they can win, because obviously there won't be any fans there now. So you know what I mean. Years ago they'll want Sunderland away or Portsmouth away, but now you get the best team you can do to progress through. But no, FA Cup, I love the FA Cup. I was a manager not so long ago in the FA Cup in these kind of rounds. The FA Cup was kind to me as a player, so you know what I mean. I still keep a close eye.
Excellent. And guys, in the people in the chat, tell us what your highlight of the footballing weekend was. Laurence, what was yours?
Okay, so my highlight, well, I use that in inverted comments because I was working at the Bristol City Swansea game on Saturday. Finished 1-1. It was a pretty good second half. In the stadium, Bristol City had sold out the Lansdowne Lounge to a good number of tables. They had a big screen. So inside the stadium, in the Lansdowne stand, were, I don't know, 100 or so people. Plus down in the sports bar, they had that, all people buying tickets there. Nobody in the bloody stadium watching it, and everybody indoors in the stadium watching it. And that blows my mind that they can't come up with a system where they have a reduced capacity. So it's not necessarily a highlight, but it highlighted to me how insane things are at the moment, that they can sit inside, eat a 3-course meal, watching it on a big telly in the same stadium that they can't go outside in and sit in a mask and watch in person. And I'll tell you, it was a pretty decent game as well.
No, good.
Andy, I know you want to talk about that, don't you? Letting fans back in.
It goes straight on my point because obviously with football not really coming back, you know what I mean, obviously fans not being allowed in. You know, we tried a game at Middlesbrough, which worked, by the way. You know, there was 1,000 fans in. I was extremely happy with the way it went. Non-league football, they were allowing 300 in, which was working. They've now cut it to half, so 150. If you can have 150 fans in a stadium which holds 1,000 people, percentage-wise, you can have people spotted about. You know what I mean? If you have a bubble and you have 4 people in your bubble, as long as for me there's 5, 6, 10 seats in between the next person, for me, we can have loads of people going. You know what I mean? We can still do it safely. There's going to be no away fans coming to the grounds because they don't want people travelling and things, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But then you've got another side of the ground, which is then free again, because normally that'll be behind the goal or at the side or wherever that may be. But it's another area where people can go and be safe. And I do believe we've got to start it somewhere, because I look at the lower league clubs, you know what I mean, the Macclesfield Towns who are no longer with us, the Berries, you know what I mean, that these kind of clubs, if they weren't already folding, they're going to fold anyway, because, and we're going to get more, if they're not allowing supporters to go in and spend the money, because teams are on the backside at the minute, really financially struggling, not bringing players in and running on small squads because of that, so it's going to hit them hard during the season, not going to achieve success, and how they're going to be able to sustain and pay their wages during the season. For me, Simon Jordan did it, the Peterborough United chairman did it, said it, just start letting people back in and just do it on a number basis or percentage of the stadium. You know, if you've got the stadium, like for example, 40,000 people, you know what I mean? What's 10%? 4,000 people. You wouldn't even know there's 4,000 people there. So it's, you know what I mean? It's different if there's only 5,000 seats in the stadium and you've got you know what I mean? But then 500 people, you know what I mean? It would make a difference to a club. It would be a little bit of an income. It would make a huge difference to players. You know what I mean? The Middlesbrough game when there was fans in, Middlesbrough were really poor that day. You know what I mean? But it got them through the game because they were struggling. You know what I mean? It got them the equaliser with supporters being there, and you know what I mean? Players respond to fans. Yeah, I watched the Sky News earlier, and there was a reporter was asking questions about players playing with no fear because they got no supporters in. Well, that's great, but they're going to come in one day. So what are they going to do when the fans come back in? Just not play. You know what I mean? They've got to get used to it. The footballers, the professional footballers, they want to play in front of supporters, and it's got to be done right, but it's got to be done safe. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
But surely players want fans back in. Clubs need them back in. Supporters want to be there. You know what I mean? If you're not comfortable in going, then don't go. You know what I mean? But if the clubs and the government and everybody in the area, as long as it's not high risk at the minute, you're not shut down, and it's safe to go in, then I'm all for it. You know what I mean? You don't have to go.
No, you absolutely don't. And you also, you know, you're saying to have people indoors is surely more of a potential risk than it is having them sat outside. And I think football fans, like, we get tarred with this brush of not being able to control ourselves and all the rest of it. You know, you let people in and treat them like adults and let them, you know, and you will see that they will be behaved like adults, I think, because they'll want to be back and they won't want to be knobheads and they won't want to be, you know, like acting a fool, because they want to be in there watching their team. Like, I know we've talked a little bit about mental health and the fact that people are struggling, but, you know, these football fans, they're fans who give up, not their life as such, but their life revolves around going to watch their team and their Saturday afternoon, or they're going away on a Tuesday. And I know we shouldn't do away games right now, and I totally get that with away fans. But let the hardcore fans get back in the stadiums and watch a bit of football.
But I'm all for what you've just said there, Laurence. You know what I mean? Yeah, Middlesbrough tried the same thing at the weekend. So Middlesbrough opened their hospitality for to play Cardiff City away, but they had the games on the screen. They had them in the lounge. Everything was social distance. They still did everything the way they would do it, which is great. But the whole thing about being indoors, the germs spread indoors. So, you know what I mean? For me, the best stuff outside. And I know why Middlesbrough are doing it, so they can stream the game live for supporters and earn some money while they do it, which is great, and have fans together. But you said it's happening at a club where the game's happening a stone throw outside. It's just madness, you know what I mean? If they're inside, then it's surely they're safer outside.
Yeah, I think so. Got Newport County down on my patch, and they had a good little cup run, didn't they? And played Newcastle, and I was so pleased for Michael Flynn and the lads down there, because they, you know, it's a supporters run club really. There's no big backer there. They're financing it themselves. And we asked him after the game. I think it was when he beaten Watford, so they didn't know who they. They may have known that they might get Newcastle in the next round or more. And then we were asking him the question of how the club survived. He said, well, we did the budgeting beforehand, and we've got ourselves to the end of January with no fans, and we decided to budget through to that. And they were like, so what happens at the end of January? Well, you know, can you get to the end of the season? Yes, we can get to the end of the season. It won't be pretty. And if that's, you know, and if that was a well-run small club, and they are, you know, absolutely on the brink, aren't they? These clubs on the brink. So
This is a shame for me, though. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen to the football clubs. And I know they're on about different policies to try and get parachute, or not parachute payments, but loans down to clubs. You know what I mean? If they're struggling for money, but for me, there's got to be a better way to filter money down. You know what I mean? If that's buddying up with a bigger club and helping revenue, or helping just a short term, even if it's players. You know what I mean? They've got all these big clubs who've got players who. You know what I mean? You're on about loan players. Clubs who, Newport County, for example, will still pay the wages, whereas a club could help them out financially just by giving them and helping them out with some wages and helping them with players towards the end of the season. Because then there wouldn't be things wouldn't be as tight, and they wouldn't have the expenditure that they're having every week, every month towards the end of the season, which is just a shame for certain clubs.
Couple of questions in the live chat regarding this. Rhys David Everett says, with such a big loss of revenue when the fans are allowed back in, do you think ticket prices are going to skyrocket? Laurence, we'll go to you first for that one.
Thanks. Well, I sincerely hope not. But if you've watched the Premier League, go and slap their fans who are sat at home having to watch it for £15 to go and watch pay-per-view. It doesn't hold out much hope, does it? That they're going to welcome you back with open arms. I don't know. I think it'll potentially depend on club to club if they need to do it. I think there has to be as well. There's a couple of things that kind of have to happen. I think one is that clubs have to cut their cloth accordingly, and rather than chasing and paying footballers maybe way over the mark for League 2, League 1 footballers, they need to go, look, guys, I'm really sorry, but these are the wages. And the Championship, which is probably worse than every other division. I think some of the clubs there are spending 120% of revenue on wages already. So they are just gambling everything on the Premier League. And that's not sustainable. So I think clubs need to take a long, hard look at themselves in terms of that. And no, God, don't hammer the fans. That's my plea to them, is that at this point, when we come out of this mess, there's going to be an economic mess as well. So how can fans afford it, continue to afford it? No, I really hope they don't. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if they do.
No. And the other question was, Craig said, how crazy that clubs can have fans in the stadium when the club is away, but the game is home, fans can't go. And I kind of, what I'd add to that, I think one of the issues, and which I talked about before, might be that when the fans leave the stadium and come into the stadium, they've kind of all got to congregate in the kind of foyer end of the stadium, and I assume that's where the difficulty in social distancing becomes a bit more of an issue, because they're all got to go through the foyer. But I mean, you can manage it, can't you? If you can keep people in the supermarket a couple at a time, I'm pretty sure they could let a couple of people through.
I just think we're missing a bigger picture for me. You know what I mean? I watched obviously the Middlesbrough game. You know what I mean? That every person was sat on their own. There was at least 1 or 2 seat gap in between every person. You open 4 sides of the ground, that's even less. You letting them out different gates. You're encouraging people not to touch anything. You know what I mean? Because I'd like to think they wouldn't anyway. You know what I mean? We're all, even if the children were with adults or other adults themselves. I just think we're making something harder than what it should be for me. I think we could, open 4 sides of the ground. We can still have the same amount of people, but spread them even around themselves. You know what I mean? Because let's be honest, we want to go and watch a game. We want to go and watch it safely and as safe as possible. And if you saw somebody sat in a seat, automatically you'd go and sit 10 seats away. So I just don't get it. You know what I mean? As an adult, and you do that automatically. You know what I mean? And if you were with somebody yourself who's in your bubble, or your child with you, then you're allowed to sit together, surely, because you're in the same household. So for me, I'm confused, because football's doing things differently to what the government's doing. You know what I mean? The government's saying, and obviously we've all got different governments as well. You know what I mean? And this is also what's confusing people, because Wales having a lockdown, England not having a lockdown. There's a bridge which divides. So it's difficult, and I think it's confusing at best. So I think for me, football makes the decision. British football or English football, because that's where the governing body sits in England and Wales at the minute. So for me, I don't know. I want people back in the stadium. I want to go back to a game myself because I would have loved to go to Cardiff against Middlesbrough at the weekend. It would have been a nice game for me to go and watch. I went to last year's one. I'm probably glad I didn't with the game that I watched on the TV. But when you're there, you watch a different game. You know what I mean? Watching a game on the television with zero atmosphere, with the commentary being one-sided, biased. You know what I mean? It's not like you're watching Sky where it's impartial. You know what I mean? It was Cardiff City based. It was very one-sided Cardiff City, which I didn't mind. But when Middlesbrough scored, it was a little bit like it's just, you know what I mean? You just want people to be impartial a little bit. Yeah, it's just But I can imagine why it annoys people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I watched Cardiff City a few weeks ago on Derby TV and. It was horrific. I had to put it on mute because I didn't like it. I didn't like how negative people were, and it's making people not enjoy listening to games and having commentary. You'd rather just have zero noise and zero commentary, and just have no fans noise at all.
I remember, I think at the time it was Carling Cup. It would have been right at the end of your time at Cardiff, I think, Andy.
Yeah, I think so.
And Cardiff lost 2-0 at home to Barnet in the League Cup, and I tell you what, that was the most socially distanced stadium ever, and it was 3,000 in that day. Surely we can get it back. Surely we can get it.
Exactly. And you know what? And this is what we miss because it's about getting the atmosphere back. It's about getting the camaraderie back. It's about people enjoying it. And you said there, Laurence, about mental health. You know what I mean? Like supporters are really struggling. You know what I mean? To get their heads around doing it. And for me, it's. We just need people back in. You know what I mean? Football will be a better place, and by the time we know it, people might forget about what's going on around them. And I'm not about COVID, by the way. I'm just on about their own little problems that we've all got.
Just that relief, isn't it? Just that something different to think about. And
people are going to work all week. Lawrence, they're going to work. Yeah. We're going to work all week, and when it comes to the weekend, they're getting told to sit inside and not do anything. Well, that's unfair. You know what I mean? You work all week to then have a release at the weekend, and some people's release is pure football, and you don't get that release watching the TV. You know what I mean? You get a little bit of excitement for probably an hour and a half if you're lucky. You know what I mean? If you're a Middlesbrough Cardiff fan, you normally get about 12 minutes of joy over a weekend.
Geraint just made a good point on Facebook. He said, I believe the thinking behind it is that they don't want people meeting up in pubs and congregating in large numbers, obviously walking and queuing to the ground. However, if the football's off, but the pubs are open, if they've got no football to go to, people are more likely to go to the pub because they want to get out of the house, because they feel, they've been working all week, they need to do something. Obviously, for Wales at the moment, the pubs aren't open and everything's kind of closed down anyway. But generally speaking, like the pubs have been open, haven't they, up until this week for a while now. So if the football's not on, that's not going to stop people from going to the pub, basically, is what I'm saying. Laurence, you mentioned the pay-per-view thing with the Premier League, and I wanted to touch on that a little bit, because some clubs' fans have been boycotting it, rightly so, because I think it's ludicrous to charge fans 15 quid, especially when clubs like Liverpool, West Ham, I know, is one, and a few others, I'm sure most of them, are still charging fans on their monthly direct debits to keep their season tickets. And if they do stop paying, because they're obviously paying for something they're not using, they lose their seat, which is a problem. I really, really hope that more and more fans get behind that boycott of the pay-per-view matches, and they think twice about charging fans for that. Do you think they will, Andy? And do you think it's a good idea to boycott it? Are they only hurting their own clubs though by doing it?
What's annoying me is the games now what we're having to pay for. The games that we used to get free during lockdown. So and that's the annoying thing. If we didn't get them for free before, then I do believe that people wouldn't be as upset as what they are now. And they're not great games as well, you know what I mean? But then it would annoy me just as much or probably more if they're the best games and they're making to pay for it, so the Premier League wouldn't win. Are they right to boycott it? Yes, they are. The money that's getting generated, by the way, from the boycotting, and they're getting put into certain areas. I know Newcastle fans boycotted and they put their money towards, I think, the food bank, which was absolutely fantastic, Excellent. So for me, if they're using it as a way to raise money and raise awareness and raise things, then do it. and prove a point and stick it down the Premier League's throats in the right possible way. Instead of just boycotting it for the sake of boycotting it, do it and prove a point why they're doing it. Because for me, that's the best possible way and best possible thing that they've done. Because it's too expensive, you know what I mean? Because yes, it's cheaper than going to watch the game. I understand that, but it's too expensive to sit in your own house and watch a game of football. You know what I mean? It's not worth the money. You know what I mean? And it probably wouldn't be worth it if it was for all, but it's not. And the games are horrific. The ones what they're sticking on. And I know it's not their fault, but for me, keep boycotting it, keep proving the point, and hopefully somebody will start listening and start to understand that it's about the fans. And football without fans in the grounds and on TV and social media is awful.
There's two things I understand. Yeah. One is money. So if you boycott it, then, you know, it's not making any money. It's costing the broadcaster. They're getting antsy, and the Premier League club aren't getting the cash back in. The other thing is publicity. And so if you're doing it, Andy is exactly right. If the Newcastle fans, the way they did it, they didn't need to stamp their feet. They didn't need to throw a wobbly and this, that, and the other, and they could be just dismissed as whining Geordie fans and all the rest of it. No, they did it properly. They did a really good thing. You do a good thing, and it highlights the greed that's being done at the other side. And that is not something I imagine the Premier League would like.
Well, the only way they'll listen is if they lose money, ultimately.
Yeah. Well, they don't come about with smelling roses, do they? You know, they put it in a good cause, especially at the minute with obviously the school holidays and Marcus Rashford and what he's trying to achieve and things and Newcastle United. You know what I mean? They've had some really bad publicity. Laurence there mentioned about supporters at Newcastle that normally they whinge and they complain and they have protests, but they did this in the right way, and it makes me think that, do you know what? If every club can do a similar thing and vote in the right possible way, then the Premier League, they'll have to listen, because there's only one winner, and fans are the winner of this. You know what I mean? And I do believe that. You know what I mean? Football would normally be the winner, and Premier League would normally be the winner, but fans are voting the right possible way, and the Premier League are looking silly at the minute.
And it happened to the clubs during the start of lockdown, didn't it? There was Spurs and Liverpool, I think, were very early. They sort of taken the furlough cash. And the fans' reaction, their own fans' reaction to that, forced them to change their mind. And I think that's kind of the way it needs to be for the Premier League this time round, for the pay-per-view. Do it the right way.
Yeah.
Show them up, and hopefully they'll change their mind on it.
So I think I've upset Donna in the group chat. In the chat, by the way, she's Donna put a comment up.
This one?
Yeah. Sorry, Donna. I just thought it was a little bit. Listen, I'm a Cardiff City player, ex-Cardiff City player, Cardiff City fan, but I just did think it was a little bit one-sided, like they all are, and like Middlesbrough's, by the way. When Middlesbrough playing at home or the Middlesbrough TV and do it, I just think could the EFL have neutral commentators? Just I know that.
Yeah, they do.
I'm dreaming.
They are frustrating, though, aren't they? Those commentators.
I'm dreaming. The EFL can't get anything right. They're certainly not going to get that right, are they?
No. I think they just let the clubs do it, don't they? They just let the clubs do it themselves on their own TV channels and then.
Lawrence, let's be honest. The EFL let the clubs run the league, so they're not going to start running TV for them, are they? To be honest.
But what I don't understand is surely the easiest way to do it is the majority of Championship clubs and Premier League clubs have either got their own TV station or they've got a Cardiff City TV, for example, online. Is you just let teams stream their own games. Even if you charge a $5, but to season ticket holders it's free for the home games. Just for instance, people would pay that, probably pay a tenner. But when you're asking for 15 quid, it just feels like greed. And I just, I don't know, I don't like it. And I feel like when you're asking the season ticket holders for money to hold their seat, there should be a better way to give those season ticket holders their games and watch their teams play. And I just feel like it's just the Premier League at the moment, money grabbing, which is unheard of course.
But I tell you what, though, what it's done for me, it stitched me right up this weekend, because I didn't even realise that there was a Friday night game. I had so little interest in the game. I can't even remember who it was who played Friday night. Was it Leeds Villa, wasn't it?
Leeds Villa, yeah.
And like it was on pay-per-view, so I hadn't really spotted it, and I kind of like taken a half interest in it, but I missed that it was probably on, and I didn't get my fantasy team done in time. I was like properly gutted. I left Van Dijk in and everything.
Yeah, especially if you've had Paddy Bamford.
Oh, tell me about it. Surely no one captained him this weekend, did they?
I always said, and that Paddy Bamford was a Premier League player, mate. If you remember last season, I said every week what a quality player he was. Absolutely. And maybe he's just more suited to the Premier League. Some players are.
You just got the eyesight.
Well, to be honest, I look at and obviously that's the point that I wanted to talk about is the gulf and the difference between the Premier League and the Championship, because I look at the West Brom of this world and I didn't see a massive difference between the Leeds and the West Broms. You know what I mean? West Broms for me were more organised. They were probably harder to beat. Where Leeds were a little bit more expansive. They were good going forward. They created a lot of chances, but they shipped a few more goals. Where I look at the Premier League now. And the games are a lot tougher, games are a lot harder. Leeds are going for it. Leeds are scoring goals, but they look quite strong in defence. West Brom look clueless going forward. They look shaky at the back, and it's just and especially with the manager. You know what I mean? Slaven Bilic for me, very good manager, defensively strong. He's he's built by a unit and built by a way of playing, and that way of playing is just not suiting. Yes, they got a decent result today away at Brighton, but. I think I think he's probably surprised himself how much he struggled this season in terms of how well they did last season.
Mind you, they stumbled over the line, didn't they, in the Championship?
Yeah, they did. I would have liked to seen if they would have gone up. You know what I mean? Because that would have been. I know they did. But if the fans would have been in, because for me, and the same with Leeds and West Brom, with the size of the clubs. They were starting to feel a little bit of the pressure. You know what I mean? I think with no fans in there, they were able to relax a little bit, able to take a little bit of time out and be able to. You know what I mean? There's not a worse place to play at Ellen Road in front of a hostile crowd as a probably opposition and home player, and probably same at the Hawthorns as well. You know, it's a pressure can do different things to players. You know what I mean? Especially when you're so close to that holy grail of the Premier League. It's a difficult one, but listen, got an excellent bunch of footballers, but. The Premier League's a different animal as well, and I expect them to probably do a little bit better than what they are.
Question from Gaz there. Which Championship player has excited you the most so far this season? Andy, you go first, mate.
Pedro from Watford. I think he's just been out of this world. The goal he scored against the goal he scored against Derby was just extraordinary. His performance on the first day of the season against Middlesbrough was just outrageous. He was getting in. He was like a little Janino. He was getting in pockets. He was causing problems, running with the ball, dribbling, and things that I just love to see. And we seem to get them in the Championship. We seem to get these little diamonds in the Championship. You know what I mean? We got him with Pereira at West Brom. We got it with Bradley Dack. He was scoring goals, running from midfield. But then all of a sudden they get promoted to the Premier League and we lose them. We never get them back. You know what I mean? Dean Garner from Brentford, Ollie Watkins. We get all these good players in the Championship, but then they leave us and go somewhere else.
Yeah. What about you, Laurence? Who's impressed you in the Championship so far?
Oh well, as you said, we've got Cardiff and Boro kind of hardcore watching. I'm going to upset them by saying Morgan Gibbs-White, and I'm absolutely gutted that he has got injured for Swansea, because just watching him in that number 10 role, what a player. You know, just intelligence, the way he got on the ball, he was making things happen. His link play with IU was superb. So I'm really disappointed that he's got himself injured, because he had such a bright start to the season. So this could be a coming of age moment for him.
Yeah, well, I think his own moments as well. He's at probably the best club for him. You know what I mean? The way that he's had a good upbringing with playing at Wolves, he's at the perfect club for me. He's perfect fit, and he needs to play games as well. You know what I mean? Because at the minute he wasn't even probably a bit starter at Wolves. He was so far away from the first team. He might be on the bench, but he was miles away from getting the first team football and regular games that he needed. And for me, it's about getting 30, 40, 50 games under your belt this season and showing how good you are, and then kicking on. I mean, look at Brewster. Brewster had a good 6 months, and look where he's gone. Look at the amount of money which he's left for. And if Wolves look at that as an example, you know what I mean? For me, he's better. He's a better fit, and he's a better player. So for me, he could go for even more money.
What's it like for a player, Andy, when they get they have that early breakthrough? Because it was what happened to Gibbs-White, wasn't it? He had that early breakthrough in the Championship with Wolves, and you're thinking, oh yeah, what a player they've got here, and then it just doesn't quite happen for you. What's that like for a player, and how do you get beyond that?
It's tough. It's really tough. You know, I remember making my debut back 96, 97 at Middlesbrough. I was only 16, which was great, and I didn't really expect to play much more the following season. But I got another few games, which was great. Played in a few Carling Cup, FA Cup, Premier League. But then the following season, you make your goals, your smart targets. I want to play 10 games, and that season I didn't play one game, and I was so frustrated. I thought, was it me? Am I not doing it? Am I not performing? But the manager decided that he was gonna go down a different area. He was bringing in the Ravanellis, the Dininos, the Emersons, the Voxages. So he took me out, played the reserve, played the youth team. I went on loan to Sheffield United and learned a different way of doing it under a different manager, Steve Bruce, and just really enjoyed it. And it was just so different. But for my football education, I wouldn't change it for the world, because I'm a big advocate for these loan moves. I think the loan system is just absolutely fantastic. But as long as it's done in the right way. I look at certain clubs who loan out 30, 40 players. That there's no for me. There's no reason to do that. You know what I mean? But if you've got a player who you think is so close to the first team but needs to be playing against men regular to be tested to see if he's good enough to step up, the loan system is great for those kind of players. And for Gibbs White, for me, he's got a great advocate for that. And look at Brewster. For me, it's absolutely fantastic and a great system to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll throw in one more name, Si, just before you go in. That's Michael Elise from Reading.
Yeah.
As I sort of watched him down at Cardiff when they won there, and he looked like that sort of street footballer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
just enjoying himself.
Plays off the cuff. He's got pace. He can turn in a sixpence and kind of nutmeg you and twist you inside out. And it just felt like there were moments of his game you could tell he was still really raw, and he was making sort of the wrong decision at the wrong time in sort of game management, but at the same time he looked an incredible talent.
Yeah, one of the players who's caught my eye in the last couple of games is Ojo for Cardiff. Obviously scored a couple of goals, and we said, and when he scored his first goal, that could be the making of him for the season, because just a bit of confidence, because he looked like he had something about him before that, but he didn't quite have the finished product. He would pick the wrong pass, like you were just saying, Laurence, about these young players. They'll take the wrong choice with that final ball, or choosing to shoot or whatnot. And I felt like he was doing that, and so I felt since he scored that goal, obviously he's gone on and scored again, and I've been quietly impressed with him. He hasn't been incredible, but I feel that he's been one of the players who stood out. Obviously, Cardiff as well have given. They gave a debut, didn't they, to that the young lad at fullback? I forgot his name.
Ossie Tutu.
No. What was it? It begins with B. I can't remember what his name was. I'll find out now. But yeah, I mean, he played
left back instead of Joe Bennett.
That's it. Yeah. I can't remember what his name was. Bagan. I kept thinking Bogan, but Bagan. But I thought he did.
Joe Bagan.
I thought he did really well, considering his age, first game in, coming in. I thought that was outstanding.
I thought he was excellent on Saturday against a typical Neil Warnock side. You know what I mean? Who tried to physically get one over on quite a lot of areas in the game and throw a lot of set pieces. I thought he held his own really well, and it'll be interesting to see long term, because we're on about players here, and Laurence just said it there about. So he comes out of the side, for example, in 2-3 weeks' time when Joe Bennett gets himself fit. How will he feel? You know what I mean? Because will he want to go and play regular football? Will he want to continue that going to play in the Championship League 1, League 2? Because it's about football development. There's no point playing for 3, 4, 5 weeks and then all of a sudden not playing again, because it can hamper players' development and confidence as well. Because unless it's handled really well, you know what I mean? If he's playing because of circumstances, if he's playing because he's good enough, it's irrelevant for me. He's playing now because he's a good fit and he's doing really well.
How are you finding Neil and Boro about bringing through the young boys? It's that thing that sort of follows him round, that he's not necessarily the best type of manager to give the youngsters a chance. And at Cardiff, I think that was definitely something that Sticky was poked with Andy. Is that something you're finding up there?
Yeah, I think the players. It's like tried and tested with Neil. That he likes the lads who know the league. He likes the lads who he trusts, who he's worked with before, who he's worked with in previous clubs. Who've got a good track record, and and it's that unknown where, you know what I mean. For me, it's not obviously the style of football sometimes which you want to watch week in, week out. You know, I watched the Bristol City game and the Cardiff City game, and when they took the lead in both games, you just know straight away you're not going to lose. You know what I mean? If you draw, you get a result. But once you're ahead against a Neil Warnock side, that was Cardiff City manager, Middlesbrough manager now, that you just know that as an opposition player, coach, manager, supporter, you're not really in for a great spectacle because they sit and kill a game and just see it out. You know what I mean? And as a Middlesbrough fan, yes, it's about results. You know what I mean? But sometimes it's more than that. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's about being entertained and it's about certain aspects of it. And yeah, basically, especially on a night game. Yeah, Bristol City game was a long night. It was a long night.
Yeah. Couple of questions then from the chat, and guys. Yeah, we're going to finish off kind of with some questions and some bits and pieces now. So if you have got any questions for Laurence or Andy or all of us, send them in. Donna would like to know, why do you think Benkovic is not playing for Cardiff yet? So if I just quickly say, I basically think it's because you've got Harry Wilson and Ojo both playing very well. And I think that's probably what's keeping him out at the moment. I'd expect him to start at some point once those guys, maybe their form drops a little bit. But Andy, what do you feel about that one?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? You know what I mean? Because and I'll use what Laurence just said there with Neil Harris. That Neil's got a similar mould for me. Neil plays in areas who he trusts and who he can rely on. You know what I mean? And he sticks religiously to a system. You know what I mean? In his system, if his system doesn't fit a player, he won't budge. You know what I mean? And that's one up front. If that's three behind, two sitters, four defenders, you know what I mean? He religiously sticks to it. And you know what I mean? Sometimes he's got this versatility and having this plan B. You know what I mean? But it's successful. It's worked. You got him in the playoffs. He's had a relatively decent start of the season. So you know what I mean? For me, yes, as a player, he'll be frustrated. But you know what I mean? Because he's probably been promised first team football going there, but. It must be so frustrating nowadays being a player, because I look at the formations. Back when I played, everything was 4-4-2. It was great for me because I'd play up front with a taller striker. You know, I mean that's just, it doesn't happen now. You one up front, you're three players behind. I start to question where I would fit in, because if people saw me as a centre forward, I probably couldn't do that role up front on my own, because I'd get bored.
Do you reckon you'd be playing out wide, mate?
I'd have to, because I wouldn't enjoy getting battered off the centre half week in, week out, and you know what I mean, and
having to play with your back to goal most of it
all the time, because I'd want to run off and run down the channels, and that doesn't suit anybody who plays that formation. You've got to have that number 10 behind. You've got to have the two runners wide, and you've got to have a big target man up front. That's where the successful sides seem to have it nailed on. But you know, for me, I'd have probably crashed and burnt and failed miserably playing up there on my own.
Just back onto Benkovic for a second, because I saw him at Ashton Gate playing for Bristol City at the end of last season, and he got underused there by Lee Johnson as well. And at the time, you couldn't quite see. When he came on and he would play, you get the ball in. He's very good on the floor. He's got that kind of tenacity as well in the challenge, but he did look like he get knocked around a bit for the size of him, but maybe that's why he's being sent up there to toughen up, which is kind of surprising, really. But I think where you've got Nelson and Morrison at the moment, I think he's quite happy. I think Benkovic will have to force his way in, maybe through an injury or a mistake from one of those two. But make no mistake, Benkovic is a huge markup on Flint. You got Flint out for Benkovic in, so that's a good deal for Cardiff overall.
Morrison and Nelson as a partnership,
well, they do the job, don't they? They do the job that Neil Harris wants them to do. They'll fight. They've got aggression, and Nelson's got the pace to get around him.
Well, for me, they're a perfect fit for the Championship, fellas.
I do. I agree with that.
Especially for the way they play as well.
Yeah, you know what I mean. We're on about teams who overplay. These guys don't overplay. They don't overplay because it's not in their remit. It's not their job. It's not in their job title. Neil doesn't want them to play that way, but they defend and defend properly.
Yes. Laurence, we get this question every week by the same person, Gaz, that asks, who's the biggest knobhead you've met in football and why? If if you'd like to dodge it, then you'll have to feel like dodge it.
Who's the biggest knobhead?
You've had some good answers though. People
like
the question, don't they?
We've had some good honesty on that. We had some good honesty on it, and some quite surprising ones.
Knobhead. One. I don't know if it's knobhead. Well, actually, I'll tell you what. Dave Jones, for the old Cardiff manager, comes very, very close. So my first
doesn't come close.
Yeah,
nailed on.
Nailed on.
My first job was at Real Radio Wales, and so I was a kind of very young sports journalist, just cutting my teeth there. And I asked him, and funnily enough, actually, it was after that Barnet game where you'd lost in the cup, and it was like the last question. I said, "Oh, Dave, do you think the 3,000 or so that turned up and got charged full whack?" Because there was a bit in the build up to it where Cardiff are still charging full whack for people to go and watch it while it was a Champions League night, and he essentially played a second string team, made 11 changes. I just said, do you think the fans that turned up, do you think they got value for money tonight? He turned on me and he went, value for money? Have you got any other stupid questions, or is that your only stupid question? Well, of course they got value for money. They got to see their side. Right.
That's getting clipped.
That's fine.
Just so you know.
It's for young journalists, you go, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
And the best thing was that when I took that back to the office, the guys just went, brilliant. We'll start the phone in the next night with that clip. So it was, Cardiff fans, do you think you've got the right? You had value for money last night.
Perfect.
So go on. We'll stick it on Dave Jones. I was also going to say Andre Biquet, who was at Reading, and I was in the media zone waiting for the Reading players to come out, and he came out on his phone, pretending to be on his phone, and then it started ringing in his hand as he was like, no questions, lads, I'm on the phone. And then it started ringing. So,
that's
poor.
That's very poor. That
it's pretty novel.
Yeah. The thing is, Laurence, you know what I mean? Like footballers, you know what I mean? People say that and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. People say that players get a bad rep though, but when people do things like that, you know what I mean? It's you know what I mean? You're judged on what you see. You know what I mean? You're honest and you judge people by who they are and what they do. And I just think that the relationship between footballers now and supporters, media, is just, the distance is ridiculous. It's too far. And you know what I mean? That I've got a really good relationship with probably 99% of football fans who I've come across in my lifetime, because you just try to be real and you try to be a normal person with them. If that's meeting them in the public, if that's doing things or helping out as much as you can, it's just, you don't need to be someone that you're not, or pretend to just be something. You know what I mean? In 5-10 years' time, these footballers won't be footballers anymore. So are they going to then try and bridge that gap with supporters? Because then the damage has been done, because they remember that you didn't sign the autograph. They remember that you wouldn't do a photo. They remember that you wouldn't post on somebody's Twitter page or Instagram post or whatever. And I just think, just be a normal person. If you want to do something, do it. If you don't want to do it, then live and die by the sword sometimes.
Spot on, mate. Can't argue with that at all. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Laurence, was your experience during the international break. Obviously, with no travelling allowed, so you weren't able to go to, where was it, Ireland, and who else did we play?
England. Yeah, well, it should have been a triple header away day, shouldn't it? It was going to London, flying to Dublin for 4 days, and then going to Sofia to go and go to Bulgaria.
That sounds like a good week, that.
Wow. Instead, I was sat in here. What was
that like as an experience, though, having to do those post-game interviews?
Just before you came in, Andy, and it was so on the Sunday when it was the Dublin game, so Wales against Ireland. We had the in-laws over to start with, bacon sandwiches and all that, and then I had to excuse myself so I could go and watch the game on the telly, and then I had to come up to the spare room where my office is, and then speak to Ryan Giggs in Dublin via Zoom. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, this is the new normal is crap.
No, I really feel for you as well, Lord, because it's you see the managers as well, and it's just they don't really want it. They don't want it to be happening as well, don't they? They enjoy that relationship between the press, you know what I mean, especially the local press, you know what I mean, country's press, and talking the exciting about a game, you know what I mean. They might not like it so much after a game if the result hasn't gone the way that they wanted to, but they're excited before a game. They're excited about the prospects of winning a game against a big nation, or winning a Nations Cup game, or winning the World Cup qualifier, for example. And I feel really sorry because Ryan's took over that job, and he's just had such bad luck. As in
Problem after
what's
problem,
going
innit?
on. You know, what I mean, if that's players, if that's the Gareth Bale factor, if that's Aaron Ramsey stuck over in Italy, if that's players getting injured and then COVID and then no fans, it's one thing after another. You know what I mean? It's just and this is a job that he's probably always dreamed of doing, and it's just turning into a bit of a nightmare, really. But as long as he doesn't leave a bad taste.
But I think he's handling it all quite well. I have to say,
so
and getting him.
And he's doing a good job as well, by the way. He's putting his own stamp on it, and you know what? There's a lot of managers who've done the same job and not got the credit what he's getting so far with the things that he's trying and the teams he's selecting and the squads that he's picking. So for me, he can only be judged by those probably factors. So he's so far so good.
The nicest bit of the whole international window was so it was the Bulgaria game, and it wasn't the basic games, but they such a young side that Wales put out. The average age was a little over 22, and seeing those youngsters really giving absolutely everything, and then Johnny Williams popping up with what was a fantastic finish as well, by the way, but popping up with that goal and his first goal for Wales, and he is just an absolute diamond. Lovely kid. So much talent as well that it's never quite seen fulfilled club-wise, but just gives everything for Wales. So to see him score, and then so we got on our Zoom. We had all the journalists were in their little blocks, ready to ask the questions, and we were all like, "Hey, bloody hell, Johnny did it, didn't he?" And then he was coming in, and he was just sitting down as he saw us all going like that. So apparently when I was chatting to Sarah from the FAW, she was like, he saw you all celebrating when he first got on. And he just had this like beaming grin as soon as he was going. Because we were so chuffed for him. One of those type of players that just gives that absolute everything for the cause.
But that's so nice though for him though, isn't it? Because that's a memory that he won't forget, you know what I mean? And you know what I mean? Players and the relationship we spoke about the press, because that moment's happened to him. He'd have loved to go in the press room and see everyone's faces and be in there. You know what I mean? Because that
answer
moment,
the questions. He wants to be interviewed and questioned.
You live for it, don't you? So that moment he's missed out on. So to see it all happen and unfold via Zoom or whatever it was, it just must be an amazing feeling still.
You just reminded me of something, Laurence. Craig's got a question for you, which I'll get to in just a sec. But you reminded me what you said about Zoom and being in your office in your spare room. And I saw on LinkedIn on deadline day, loads of the Sky Sports guys like in their home offices and stuff, and having like TVs and everything set up to do their job on deadline day, but from home, which is obviously different. But I wanted to ask you about how you feel deadline day as a concept has progressed since the transfer windows came in, and then they kind of gradually got bigger and bigger. And I remember when United signed, who was it? Berbatov.
Yeah.
You had like the video going of him walking across the top of one of the corridors, and it was like this huge big deal. Then it kind of progressed and grew into the Jim White show. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to Jim. I just mean it just became more about him. And then kind of now, the last few have been absolute flops, in my opinion. There's been no big signings, really, and nothing's really happened. But I remember days going back probably 5 years. I was glued to my phone and to the TV watching Deadline Day. Like, as a football reporter and a journalist, how do you view Deadline Day and how it's evolved?
You might be asking the wrong sports journalist, because I bloody hate it. I think it's the most boring, overblown load of pants ever. So it's like, I actually don't really work. I try not to work deadline day because I just...
Bank holiday for you.
Awesome. But I know exactly what you mean. When it was happening, Sky did such an amazing job of hyping it to its absolute max. And when you got the fans outside the stadiums and all that kind of stuff, it was fantastic, and it was fantastic TV, even if it wasn't happening. And you used to get people buying in on the joke, didn't you? Oh yeah, we've seen Ramos arriving at the Tesco's round the corner from Crystal Palace, or do you know what I mean? Like, it was all those kind of brilliant rumours flying around that were just being made up. So everyone kind of bought into it. And it just got to the point, though, didn't it? I think it was poor old Alan Myers, who was the reporter outside. I can't remember which ground he was outside, and the toy that got waved in his ear. And as soon as that...
Everton, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Everton.
Yeah, and Alan Myers is such a great guy, been in the business for so long.
Another classic
I think they were starting to get other
Peter
problems.
Odemwingie as well, when he got turned away. They were good,
he knocked on the door.
Harry Redknapp.
But I think as well, though, clubs are playing a role in this as well, though. You know what I mean? Because if clubs wait till the last minute to do a deal, they're going to overpay. So if they do a deal a week earlier, or 5 days, or 3 days earlier, they're going to pay potentially $1 million to $10 million less. So you know what I mean? For me, as a businessman, which you know what I mean, as owners are,
if you're leaving it,
why
get
your business done early? Because then you're guaranteed to sign these players. Because if people are not sure that a deal can be done logistically, financially, if a player wants to do it, then you're missing out. You've got to wait 6 months. For me, it just doesn't make sense. I don't know why people leave all these deals up to that last day. We have a deadline so that people can't sign after that time. Yeah. You don't have to leave. You don't have to leave a thousand deals till that minute. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why wait?
The only reason you do is if you're a Daniel Levy and you're trying to screw Swansea down for like every penny for a Joe Rodon, aren't you? That's where deadline day is used for.
But it's like Cavani is a prime example. He's been on a free all summer for months, and then United signed him on deadline day.
He was like 5th choice for United, wasn't he?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Didn't get this. This didn't happen. Or we'll go and sign Cavani then.
This doesn't make sense to me. It's sounding like that. You know what I mean? That United have had a really struggle. They've struggled to start the season. You know what I mean? They signed him to start the season to get him fit. He plays.
He'd be flying by now, wouldn't he?
He would be. Whereas now he's still catching up. He hasn't played since.
Get fit.
Probably. I don't know if he played. I can't remember if he played Champions League final, but I don't know if he was.
No.
So you know what I mean? He's probably hasn't played
for months.
So and this is a decision which has got to be a business decision because somebody sanctioned that decision and waited for that time to sanction it. You know what I mean? If he was on the hit list, then he's the best option because he's free.
Yeah, spot on. Just to finish this off, then. First of all, Craig's just put something in the chat which I was about to say a minute ago, and I don't know. I think the conversation went elsewhere, but I can't believe Cardiff didn't try and sign Johnny Williams. He's 100% the kind of player they need. I always felt when he left Palace, Cardiff should have gone in for him. It was the perfect type of player, perfect signing. Everything seems right for it, and I don't quite understand why they've never. I think they've been loosely linked, maybe once or twice. Do you think he'd be a good fit, Laurence, for Cardiff?
I think if you've got Tomlin in there, who just never seems to be fit. And blows hot and cold so much that you desperately need a number 10. You need somebody who can do a little bit different to be that little bit of a spark in the final third. But he'll also give you the running maybe that Tomlin doesn't. I think you'd be a great little fit in there, to be honest with you. But then I'm massively biased because I think he's awesome.
He is awesome. And Craig also asked just a few minutes ago, he said, Laurence, do you have a manager that you always look forward to interviewing?
I loved Chris Coleman. I loved Chris Coleman as a manager to give you something. Do you know those type of managers who will always give you a little line? Actually, and do you know what? Actually, Neil Warnock as well. Although I was slightly petrified of him, he actually was like he was just give you so many diamonds of lines. And you can just tell, you can see his sort of, his mind working before he's even got there. He knows what he's going to say. He knows the line he wants to give you, and he knows what he wants to distract you from. And as long as you sort of know and you're aware that's going to happen from him, then it was great. It was great theatre, and it was great watching him in action. And Coleman as well, differently because of the passion that he would give it, and you could always just see that it meant everything to him. So yeah, they've been my two favourites to deal with, I think, in terms of post-match stuff.
Yes, I'd love to interview. I'd love to get Neil Warnock on here on a Monday.
He'd be brilliant. He would be brilliant. I'll tell you just really quickly, little Neil Warnock story, and it was way before Cardiff, right? So I was working at a radio station in Reading, And I don't know if any of you remember the game, but I think Keith Gillespie came on and literally was sent off within about 30 seconds of coming on, because he came on, elbowed Noel Hunt in the face.
Keith talked about that, didn't he?
Yeah, they all kicked. Oh, yeah, there you go. They all kicked off. Wally Downs ran across to try and grab hold of Warnock, got both of them sent off. And I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs at Reading waiting for them to come out, and Neil sort of walked past. I thought, I'll go up and get his presser, because this would be good. And he's coming up the stairs and he turns around and he goes, "Do you enjoy that game, lad? Do you enjoy it?" So it was good, Neil. Yeah, I said, all got a bit fiery, didn't it? Hey, it's gonna have some fun in this press room now, lad. Come on, let's get ourselves in there, shall we? And then he just then put on this all act. Butter wouldn't melt, and he said, "Well, I don't know what happened. Wally just went mad. I don't know what they did." And it was just genius. He just had the whole room on 10 days, just fantastic. So great thing. Great character.
You need people like that, though, don't we? You know what I mean? Football wouldn't be the same without that.
100%.
You know what I mean? You just said there about people that you look forward to interviewing. You know what I mean? It must be nothing worse than going into an interview that you know that it's not going to entertain you, or it's like pulling teeth, or it's just relatively boring. You know what I mean? You've got to enjoy doing what you're doing. Yeah.
Another classic manager for doing that sort of thing. Arsene Wenger, when he used to say, "Oh, I didn't see it," it almost became like a meme where he would just say, "No, I didn't see it," and I'm sure he was kind of in on the joke by the end of it, and he would just say, "I didn't see it," because he just used it every week.
Go-to answer. It's a go-to answer, isn't it? It's just, but the thing is,
you wouldn't get tell you otherwise, couldn't they?
You wouldn't get away with it now with the amount of monitors and things. You wouldn't get away with that at all. You know, it'd be like, what about the monitor? What you looked at straight after the incident, or you know what I mean, or you wouldn't get away with it.
Yes, 100%. Okie dokie. Lawrence, thank you very much for joining us, mate. It's been a lot of fun chatting.
Guys, really enjoyed it. Enjoyed it.
Tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Oh, goodness. Well, you can find Welsh Football Fans on Welsh Football Fans. If you go onto Facebook, that's where we do our main bit of business. And that's where our kind of main audience is. We do weekly Wales Watch. So if you're a big Welsh football fan, get yourself across onto Wales Watch. Get yourself there, 7:00 on a Thursday evening. Type Welsh Football Fans into Facebook, and that's where you'll find us. And then your FC Cymru for the FAW, we do a little bit of that. And then TalkSPORT on a Saturday afternoon for Game Day Live.
Good stuff. Andy, as ever, it's a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, I loved it, mate. Really enjoyed it.
Always good. Me and Andy will be back on Friday for the championship show, which is going to be a cracker as usual. If my computer doesn't do the usual Friday night fun. Of course, we've got lots of other shows over the week, so check them out. But mental health in sport, I feel like I should mention that again. Yesterday we dropped episode number 3 with former Wales international David Cottrell. The feedback to that's been amazing. I thank everyone who's sent messages, because I haven't replied to them all yet. But next week we've got Warsaw captain James Clark on, so he's the first current player of the series, talking about his experiences with PTSD. It's a really kind of interesting show, and it's another different aspect to mental health, which we discussed, and obviously we thank him for coming on. So check that out, 8:00 Sunday on Facebook and YouTube, and of course check out the Andy Campbell Football Show and the A.C.E Footy Show on all platforms. And big thank you to Black Diamond Sports, big thank you to Bespoke Financial for sponsoring the show. Massively appreciated. And of course to all our loyal viewers and listeners who tune in and download every week, we thank you. Thanks for the comments. Until next week, or till Friday, 7:00 Friday, join us. Cheers.
My mummy and daddy have been talking about life insurance. It sounds like something to protect my brother and me, but I don't really understand. Then my auntie Louise told mummy about Bespoke Financial Teesside. She said they're a local company who helped her with her life insurance. Mummy got in touch, and because they're based locally, a man called Darren was able to come to our house. He was really friendly. Darren stayed for a cup of tea and made it all really easy to understand. He said that life insurance will protect our home and family if anything bad were to happen. Like if mummy or daddy got sick, then we'd get enough money to take care of us, and our house would be paid for so it wouldn't get taken away. After an hour, Darren said goodbye and mummy and daddy seemed a lot happier. Once it was all sorted, we could all relax and watch a film together as a family. I don't know why they didn't do it sooner.